Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about the part of Elea I don't like, and that's the writing. It starts the instant I click the button, so we're going to kind of lay the ground podcast style for a second here. Elea's writing has the same flaws that a lot of indie devs have had recently, and so studying it will be hopefully a good example of how to not make that mistake anymore. Elea's mistakes are the same, but they're so incredibly exaggerated that they're easy to learn from, in theory. So we're going to try and learn from them. Stories are a linear experience. Even if the story is out of order, humans experience the story, the audience experiences the story in a specific order. And that's important because what that means is that each scene lays the groundwork for the next scene. So if you were telling a fairy tale, you might be saying something like, once upon a time, and then the audience is ready to hear some fairy tale. So like, there was an old woman who lived in the deep, dark woods, and then they're ready to hear stories about wood sprites or wolves. If you just run up to someone on the street and shout, there was an old lady who lived in the woods, they're not going to get the same thing out of it because they didn't get the same thing going into it. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what the player is feeling going into a scene, you can't change their mind very easily because you don't know where their mind is in the first place. This is a mistake that indie devs make all the time. They try and create these wonderful little scenes, but they don't consider how the scenes will flow, and they don't consider what the player will experience. And so they just kind of throw this wonderful stuff at the wall and hope it sticks, but it rarely does, unless the audience is extraordinarily forgiving, or all of your scenes have the same tempo, which I don't recommend. Elea is inspired by psychedelic sci-fi. This is a subgenre from the 60s and 70s that died out when LSD died out, and it hasn't really been seen since. If you've seen 2001, the ending of 2001 is psychedelia. So if our brains all exploded at the end of 2001. Well, that was a whole genre. There were like a lot of movies in that genre, and some of them were sci-fi movies, and it was lovely seeing these wonderful psychedelic sci-fi movies where the qualities of the science fiction and the drug trip were so intertwined that it was hard to tell where one started and one ended. And it was always a journey into someone's concept of what a character's inner world might be, or what the nature of the universe might be, some big, heavy thoughts that someone was having while they were on LSD. And it's always real fun to watch. They are entertaining in a way that very, very few other movies ever are. And you'd think that they wouldn't have any structure. They're just drug trips, right? But they actually have the exact same structure as normal stories, in that they are linear experiences, and you prepare the audience for whatever's coming next before you do it. The drug trips aren't just randomly thrown in. They're there to explore some concept, someone's grief, or someone's madness, or the concept of what humanity is in the depth of infinite space, something like that. But in order to set that up, you've got to tell the story up to that point. So the idea is the audience doesn't know they're being prepped for a psychedelic drug trip, but they're being prepped for one, and then you lay it in. Elea doesn't seem to understand that that's part of a progression. They seem to think psychedelia for psychedelia's sake is enough, and that is a tremendous mistake. So we're going to go ahead and start up Elea here, and we're going to go ahead and talk about the various missteps they have, but these missteps are, the ones we're focusing on, are all about not understanding the player's experience, either willfully misunderstanding it or just accidentally misunderstanding it. So let's go ahead and get started. The instant we hit play, there's no splash screens, no nothing. Elea just immediately launches into a beautiful cutscene.
Please, state your name.
River Elea Catherine Jones.
This is a wonderful cutscene. It lets us know the kind of world we're in, and it's beautiful. It's extremely slow, but we're in the mood for some introspective sci-fi, so it's all good. This is a wonderful setup.
Before we begin, I need to be certain that you are fully aware of what we're about to do here.
They also set up the conceit of the game, which is that the main character has gone and sealed her memories on purpose. And this is a really fun start. I mean, this is a very standard start. The reason that Amnesia is such a standard start for these kinds of games is because if the main character doesn't know what the world is like, you can explain it in the middle of the game rather than up front. So if the main character doesn't know that something happened, then the player doesn't have to know. And you can explain it to both of them in the middle of the game. Otherwise, you got to tell them up front, and it's really slow. It's like, who wants to start a game with like a text crawl that says, in 2093, mankind went a little bit berserk, and now we've gone into space, and no one wants to read that up front. It's going to slow the whole pace down. So by making your character an amnesiac, you don't have to do that. You can just explain it over the course of the game. Great move, wonderful time to start it. The instant we click the button, you know what the player is feeling the moment they click the button. They're interested in playing a game just like yours, or they wouldn't have clicked the button. So you know what the player is feeling coming in, and you can guide them to feel whatever you want coming out. And so now we're ready. We're calm, we're curious, we're interested. We know we're in for an introspective time with someone with no memories. It's going to be great fun. And there's a menu. Now, I probably would have preferred just to launch straight into the game from there, but I can understand why there's a menu. The publisher requires you to do certain things, and even if they don't help your vision, you still got to do them. So, okay, you got to put publisher mandated stuff in. Maybe you've got ads or something too. Who knows? But here's the thing. That's part of the audience's experience. Just because you don't want it to be there doesn't mean it's not there. If the player has to sit through an ad or whatever, you have to take that into account. So the player comes into the ad feeling something, but when you come back from the ad, they're going to be just having vegged on the couch for 2 minutes watching ads. And you have to understand that, and you have to pull them back in with something fun and interesting, like an explosion or a song or a slap fight or something to bring them back into the game world with a big hurrah. And you can see that quite obviously in a lot of shows where they'll bring you back from the commercial break with something really obvious and big and sweeping. Let's see how we do it here in Elea. It's a very simple game, just a standard walking narrative game. No control requirements or anything. It's very, very basic stuff. So we can just go straight into the game, right? Or they can make it sound like it's going to be trying to fly a jet. Okay, fine. It's dictated by the publisher. We'll just live with it. We'll move past it. And now we're ready to start the game. Okay, let's start the game. Are you kidding? Okay, fine, get through this crap. By the way, they're not joking. I'll tell you when the epilepsy starts. Definitely put this in the background or close your eyes or whatever, because it's not joking around. We're ready to start now. We've been waiting a long time now. You're kind of keeping us hanging for no Are you kidding? A giant block of all caps unreadable text. Wonderful. Now, this is a bad idea any time of the day, but this is an especially bad idea coming in off of what we just came in off of. This is doubling down on how bored we are and how impatient we are. Terrible idea. The worst part about this is they made us an amnesiac. Why are they explaining any of this? The main character doesn't know this. Why does the player have to know this? Can't you explain it to us during the game? Why did you make the main character an amnesiac if you were just gonna fart random world dev stuff straight at us anyway? What a mistake. Okay, well, they've wasted all of that wonderful momentum we had coming in off of that wonderful first cutscene, but we still have that wonderful first cutscene, and it was a pretty nice one. So let's go ahead and go into the world with that in mind. That wonderful first cutscene really set the stage. We're ready to get started. Let's start with a bang, a song.
Begin, I need to be certain that you are fully aware.
Or the same cutscene again, but longer and more boring. Oh yes, this is definitely making me really want to play the game.
Forgive me, but I must repeat.
I don't know how. I do know how. They didn't realize they were going to have this scene twice. This is a colossal misstep. I have never seen a game make this kind of misstep before, where they play the exact same cutscene twice, and the second time it's unskippable. Wow, that was a bad idea. So now what they've done is they've completely dragged us into the dirt. We are now bored as hell, and we no longer trust that the writers know what they're doing because they're just farting random crap at us over and over. So, okay, well, we bought the game. We're going to play it. Let's see what's next. Here's where the psychedelia starts, and if you like not convulsing, this would be a good time to close your eyes, because this is where the epilepsy starts. So to be honest, this was a good call. Bringing in just a touch of psychedelia right here is just enough to lure us back into the conceit of the game and to set the stage for the kind of roller disco feel that we might get out of some of this. This is good. This should have been what we saw after the epilepsy warning. It should have been, warning, epilepsy. Bang. That would have gotten us straight into the game. It would have been great. But now we're getting back into it. We're getting back into the groove. This is kind of cool. We're ready. We're seeing something cool. Let's jump straight to a space station. Something splashy. Maybe someone punching us in the face. Or maybe we dropped all our papers on a mine shaft. Or maybe a console exploded. Something that will really shake up these doldrums that you've put us in. And are continuing to put us in. Okay, this is not a space station. It's a dream sequence. It's a really, really dull, pseudo-psychedelic dream sequence. I'm not sure what pace they were going for, but I didn't sign up to watch a movie. I signed up to play a game. And they told me that I would be playing a cool game about a lady with no memories, and instead I'm just watching really, really cheap cutscenes. This is not good. They did not take into account what the player would be feeling coming into the scene, so even though each of these scenes is interesting on its own, stacked back to back, they are not interesting at all. And the epilepsy is not over. Yeah, so we are not interested in this psychedelia. This psychedelia has nothing for us. We're not in the mood to be primed by the psychedelia, and we don't know anything about this lady or her struggles or her mission or why she would be having a drug trip, so we don't care what's going on in her drug trip. It's a complete dropped ball. This is not going to pull any of the players in. It's just going to convince us that the devs are so full of themselves that they can't tell the difference between a good story and a bad story. But okay, let's get started. Something big, something splashy. Just bang and then give us control. I wanna get woken up and then put in the driver's seat. Come on, come on. Give me something. Okay. Hello? No. I want you to wake me up, not the character. The character should already be awake. I can't control it.
Yeah.
We're in another cutscene with no controls.
It's okay.
These missteps continue throughout the game. They're especially bad in the first hour. They kind of back off in the rest of the game. But it's amazing to me that you can make these kinds of mistakes, and so many of the same mistake in sequence. Each of these scenes is good, and could be put at some point in the game, but you have to understand how the player feels. If you don't know how the player feels coming into your setting, you don't know how they're going to feel going out of it, and you certainly can't change their mind. Just flashing psychedelia at someone isn't going to do anything unless you're doing it for a purpose. Similarly, trapping someone staring at a wall is only going to be interesting if it's for a purpose. Having a nursery scene, this would have been fine as an opening scene, but now we've already had another scene like it before, and now we're having another boring scene now. This flow is terrible, and it's not terrible because it's a psychedelic game. This would be terrible in any psychedelic game. In any psychedelic movie, this would be considered a very poor flow. It's also not poor flow because I don't understand what they're aiming for. I understand what they're aiming for, it's just that their aim is terrible. They haven't accomplished any of the things they've set out to do. Now the game is about this lady and her internal strife about her family. They haven't revealed exactly what's going on, but it's pretty clear that there has been some incredibly serious personal problems with their family, probably some deaths and some betrayals, and this is definitely some illnesses. So this is something where you can get a long, long way with that storyline. in a sci-fi game. Now, there are plenty of sci-fi games that have similar storylines, because sci-fi is an excellent way to explore someone's inner strife by projecting it out into the world. Dead Space is a good example of that. By having the technology and the adventure of the world reflect someone's inner struggle, you can then bring that inner struggle out into the world, and you can make it super clear and super powerful, and it really works great. And you know what? Psychedelia works with that even better, because not only can you bring it out into the world, then you can take the world and you can crumple it up and you can crush it back into their heads. It's an awesome, awesome idea, and I've seen it done dozens of times. You can really do amazing things by expressing your character's struggles in the world and then bringing those struggles back into their heads. But that's not what they've done. We don't know anything about this lady's struggles, so the psychedelia they're throwing at us is just bouncing off. We're not ready to talk about any deep philosophical things because we haven't been primed with any sort of existence yet. And not to spoil this, but this is all a dream, and then it dissolves into another dream, which dissolves into another dream, extremely long, slow dreams that feature tons and tons of shuffling around and fetch quests. And at no point does it feel like it is an experience that we are learning from. We don't know much about this woman. We don't feel any of her struggle in quite as much depth as they might want, which is a shame, because there is a lot of power here. There are a lot of moments that almost work. Like right now, we're pregnant, and we can actually look down at our own belly and stuff like that. But then they ruin that sort of thing with like jump scares and random slow shuffles, all sorts of stuff that just doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is simple. They're not considering how the player feels. They are only putting together stuff that seems like it might be fun in the moment. And they've got grand ideas of what they'd like to have the player feel, but they don't want to get the player from A to B, they just want B. And it doesn't work. So because of that, I don't think I'd recommend this game, except if you're planning to study. If you plan to study this game for writing errors, this is a great game to study, to try and figure out how you might have done it instead, and how you might have considered putting together this story in such a way that the player would care deeply and understand about her mental mindscape, and then have it all fold up and slam back in. That is a wonderful exercise, and I recommend everybody try to put together a story like that, because it is a really, really great way to assemble a story, and once you understand how to do it, you'll be able to assemble your stories a lot more cleanly. That said, Elea is a gorgeous game, and it is something that you can play as an experience. It is frustrating because it never lets you get where it's trying to take you, but it is quite an experience anyway. So if you're planning to buy it, that's my 2 cents. Have a good one.